but all of us here, friends and family who are skeptical about voting in the 2024 election, what do you say that's to those? What do you say to those who say they aren't voting because they aren't fans of the current administration and don't want to vote Republican?
What's up, culture creators? How y'all doing today? Y'all can do better than that. What's up, culture creators? How y'all doing today?
That's right.
So, look, I think one of the most important things to know about this year is your vote has power. A lot of times we think that maybe our vote doesn't matter, our vote doesn't count. But in the 2020 election cycle, less than 80,000 people decided who was the president of the United States. That's less than the population of Beverly Hills right here where we are. And so if you have family and friends who are considering sitting out of this election, number one, tell them their vote has power and it can make a huge difference. The other important thing to know, y'all, is that if you decide to sit out of this election, you are allowing other folks to decide how your tax dollars are spent, what kind of policies your kids and your family have to endure, whether it be school or healthcare. Those things really matter. And so it's really critical that, number one, again, we recognize our vote has power, but two, we don't let other people make decisions for our own lives.
So why is staying home the best choice?
Staying at home is not the best choice. I think, we've heard a lot, and there was a big debate last night. We'll talk about it in a little bit. But listen, this election this year, people are kind of saying it's Biden, it's Trump, and it's the couch. We cannot allow the couch to win this election. In 2020, more people stayed at home than voted for either President Biden or Donald Trump. We cannot allow that, y'all. Come on, hand clap for that. It's really critical that y'all understand, again, your vote has power. What we know from research is that if people feel like their vote does not make a difference or mean anything, they ain't gonna show up. And so we gotta do this not for Biden, not for Trump, but for you, for your family, for your friends, for your children, for your ancestors. This is more than just Biden and Trump in this election coming up.
Okay. Yeah, come on, hand claps for that. So, as voters, right, how can we make sure that our voices are being heard and that our elected officials are doing their best and acting on our best interests?
Yeah, that's a good question. So voting, but what next, right? We understand that voting is only one tool in our toolbox. There are lots of ways to be engaged in the political process. What we are witnessing in this country, and again, it's unfortunate, but right now, the Supreme Court has said that money equals free speech. And so you see a lot of corporations, a lot of big dollar interests really buying elections. How many folks in the room from New York? New York's in the building. On Tuesday, New York had a primary where Congressman Jamal Bowman lost his election. It was the most expensive primary in U.S. history. Over $20 million was spent in that election cycle. And so one thing to think about when we talk about making sure our voices are heard, we gotta play the long game, and part of that means putting your dollars where your values are. If there are candidates in your community, candidates in your city, in your state, who you support, you gotta show up with money. Because again, we can talk about how we should have elections that are not driven by money, but right now in this country, money equals free speech. And so if we aren't putting our dollars behind folks that are fighting for us, that are investing in us, that are doing everything that we want them to do, they can get taken out of office very, very easily. And so don't forget about the power of the pocketbook when it comes to deciding who will be in office, whether it's school board or county council. The dollars really make sense. But again, voting and money are only two parts. Make your voice heard. So sending out a tweet, sometimes we think about it as being not important. That actually does make a difference. That's really a big part of educating your network and your community, but also volunteering, going to a protest. You can do a ton of things in your community to make a huge difference in this cycle besides just voting. Voting is one thing that we need to use, but there are lots of different options to use in terms of getting engaged in our communities.
So During the election cycle, you know, we hear a lot about polls and things like that, but many of those polls don't include our community.
Right. So
So my question to you is, through your work, what are some of the major issues you hear that are important to our community?
yes, and I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but this election is really about costs, whether it be rent, whether it be gas, whether it be healthcare, education costs. Costs are really high around the country right now, and folks are struggling. And so if you are thinking about who to vote for, whether it be for, again, mayor or governor or president, I encourage you to ask questions about how are candidates going to change our economy to make sure that the little person, right, the average worker, is a part of that conversation. One stat that is very deeply disturbing to me right now is that the average CEO pay in America is 200 times the average worker. And so if your average employee is making $60,000, for instance, that CEO is making $12 million a year. And so we have a huge pay disparity in our nation right now, and folks are not able to just provide basic things for themselves. And so I would encourage you all to think about costs. How are we lowering costs? How are we doing things to make a big difference? Again, this is Quentin speaking. I'm supporting President Biden and Vice President Harris. You can give a hand clap for that. One thing that we've seen, they have lowered prescription drug costs for seniors, $35 a month. Really important. I remember being a broke 20-something-year-old and having overdraft fees. They're trying to cut overdraft fees to $14, per overdraft fee. And I know that might be a small thing, but I remember that. I remember those times where we had to figure out how to rob Peter to pay Paul. And so thinking about how people are lowering costs will be really important to people's decisions in this November.
So, last night was the first presidential debate. What was your feelings and your thoughts about it? What was some standout moments for you?
Ooh.
Yeah, Wu was right.
Anybody watch the debate last night?
They watched the NBA.
How y'all feel about that, though, right? Listen, last night was tough. I think on style, we saw former President Donald Trump do a good job. I think on substance, President Biden did a great job. And so one thing that we got to remember when it comes to these debates is we got to take personality out of this conversation. It's really about policy impacts. Who is doing a better job for your community each and every day? It's something that we got to really, really, really hone in on. I would say a standout moment for me last night was this concept of black jobs. Anybody work a black job in the room? Black jobs? So that was interesting to me. But listen, I think there are lots of calls being made right now for President Biden to step down and not run. Just giving you my 2 cents. He will be the Democratic nominee. And so for people thinking that somebody's going to come and save the Democrats, that's probably not going to happen, right? And so what I would say in thinking about the debate last night is maybe rewatch it and listen to folks talking about policy and listen to folks who were probably lying the entire time. That's really important to think about when it comes to who you should vote for in November.
Copy that. So listen, our community has played such a critical role in the past few elections. I mean, every election, I want to say. What call to action can you leave with our audience here today?
Yes. All right, y'all. So listen, this is really important information right here. In the 10 closest swing states, I'm talking Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, there are over 8 million black people who are either not registered to vote and eligible or who didn't vote in 2022 or in 2020. 8 million black people in the closest swing states in this country are not a part of the game. And so my ask of all of y'all in the room right now is to win with 10. You got 10 friends, family members, cousins, uncles, kids. Make sure folks are registered to vote and that they are engaging in this process. You all can visit votetolive.org and check your status. Anybody move in the past year? Any hands raised? Make sure you get re-registered for your new address, all right? Make sure that your friends and families are registered to be a part of this process. Again, in 2020, the election was decided by 70,000 people. In the 10 closest states, 8 million of our brothers and sisters are not even a part of the game. And so we can't complain, we can't be frustrated with the results if we aren't showing up to be a part of the process. And so all of you who are hearing me today, you are now ambassadors, you are now influencers, you are now culture creators to go and make a culture of civic engagement with your friends, your families, and your network. So thank y'all.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for your voice.
Thank you, bro.
Commitment to the community, man.
Let's do this.
Yes, sir.